Brother Ben, thank you so much for being here, my man.
Such an honor, man. Excited for this one.
Awesome, brother. So I'd love to initially just drop in with a backstory on how you got started with all this, making films, being a musician, everything that's led you up to where you are now.
The
It's a big one.
backstory. It's always like, where do you start?
Right.
Um, so let me start from day one. It was a dark, dreary day back on January 14th, 1983. Um, and I was born, and that was the first problem. Then it's just all downhill from there. Fast forward, I'm an army brat, so my parents were in the military. I moved all the time. I got very used to, moving from the northwest to the southeast to Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, where there's a matriarchal shamanic society, very, very small, but still
Hmm.
there, to Hawaii, where I experienced a lot of racism towards the Howleys.
Hmm.
Me and my brother. That's eventually why we left there. And was always really into music. I always found myself air guitaring and singing into plastic microphones and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I got really into sports and movement, but then I just had this hard left turn at one point where I decided I was just going to go um, start playing music. I started playing drums. I started playing acoustic guitar. I started singing. And my parents, like, they always like encouraged me to do whatever I wanted, but they would give me shit. They would say, like, don't quit your day job, Ben, whenever they'd hear me
Hmm.
singing. So I never took that to heart. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong.
Hmm.
So I got into a band. We were called Badfish. It was kind of like Sublime and Chili Peppers type music.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had this freak out as I was exiting high school that if I'm an artist for the rest of my life, I'm gonna have to keep making such amazing art that people want to buy it, or else I'm gonna live in a cardboard box. So I had
Right.
this freak out, and I went into the military, followed in the footsteps of my dad and every male in my family, all the way back to the Revolutionary War, apparently. And then while I was in the military, I got into this band called Hyrosonic. You can still find our last album up on Spotify. And being in the military, I wasn't allowed to really talk about the state of the world and stuff like that. Plus, I was, kind of just like a dipshit artist. I was smart enough to know what the lyrics of Rage Against the Machine meant, but I didn't really know how to put it in the context. So by the time I got out of the military, people were asking, like, please tell us, like, what's your philosophy? What's your deeper understanding? Why are you, singing these lyrics? So I decided to make a film, and it turned into Esoteric Agenda. I thought it was going to be about the band, had nothing to do with the band. It was 2 hours long, and it was all about what I saw going on in the world. And by the end of it, when I realized, what am I going to do with this? Put it up online. And people were like, finish this film. I was putting it up in 15-minute increments, and they were like, finish this film and I'll buy 1,000 copies. And I was thinking, if I finish this film like it is right now, it'll just be a conspiracy flick. And that's not what I'm into. I actually, to be perfectly honest, like, as much as I talk about it from time to time, it's not my number one jam to talk about. So I
Hmm.
decided, okay, I need to put a twist ending to show people, to empower people, to show people what human potential is and how powerful one human is.
Mm.
And I did that. I put that ending on it, and I think that's really what set me off on a filmmaking path, because a lot of people hit me up and said, I never cared to look at any of these scary topics until this film, because you didn't just leave me hanging saying that, the sky is falling, good luck. You actually introduced me back to myself and had me thinking about, as you tore down my vision of what the world really is, you built up this vision of who I really am. So they were like, can you make another film exactly like the last 15 minutes of Esoteric Agenda? And I was like, all right. So I made the film Kymatica, which is far more about collective consciousness, who we
Right.
are, what is self. And that really just, that kept me on the filmmaking path, which I never set out to do that. Really. I was eventually just working on film so I could make music videos for my band. But my band, the music industry is really hard to crack into and make money. Like, you can do it and have fun, but you want to do it and make money. There's a lot of hurdles. There's a lot of sacrifices of yourself and your time and family. You can kiss that goodbye if you want a girlfriend that likes seeing you more than a couple months out of the year. So the film career took off. And that was when I began really just diving deeper into, okay, this isn't just a career. I have the ability now to make films about topics that I'm really into. And then I get feedback. Sometimes it's not fun to get trolled, but you get feedback from people online, and it kind of refines your discernment of what's going on in the world.
For sure.
So I kind of feel like where I'm at now, yeah, I'm a filmmaker, yeah, I'm a musician, but I really utilize the internet and being a pseudo influencer in order to be in the school of life. I speak my thoughts out there, I give my art, and I get critique. And I really do take it to heart. That was the hardest part about it, was I don't just say, like, if somebody doesn't like my film and they're rude about it, like, F off. If they have no good points, then yeah. But if they're actually like striking a nerve, then I'm like, okay, this is something I should actually look at. So that's kind of what landed me where I'm at today. And as you can see, these are two films. This is Awake in the Darkness that I just did with Aubrey Marcus.
Right.
He did 7 Days in Darkness, pitch black darkness. And here's Psychedelica up here that I did with Gaia.com. So, I kind of span a wide variety of topics in the films that I make, but for the most part, they all kind of revolve around what's the higher potential of a human being, what is consciousness, what is self, and have we been lied to?
Right. Yeah. And it's been very revealing for the past couple of years, that last question there, have we been lied to? Just a complete unveiling of what's really going on behind the veil. And it's just catapulted. I believe that it's catapulted our consciousness and humanity's capacity and humanity's real reason for being here to a level that we may have never even thought possible in our lifetimes. So it's been really epic to watch your work really kind of play out almost, and all these other visionaries and all these other artists that work in the esoteric realms, to watch it all just kind of completely unravel and blossom into reality. So it's been epic, man. And, I was telling you earlier, Kymatica was my favorite film to just throw on, put my buddy on a couch, or like 2 or 3 buddies on a couch, maybe smoke a joint or something back then, and then just turn on Kymatica and just watch their jaws hit the floor with all the information that was in there. And every time I watched it, I would pull something new and just be like, Jesus Christ, whoever Benjamin Stewart is, this dude is a gangster. Thank you so much for making this film. And now we're here talking. So I'd love to ask you the question, man. I know you were telling me the film that you did before inspired Kymatica, but what was that process like in creating Kymatica? Because it's so dense with information, but it's very elegantly portrayed. It's very well delivered. So what was that process like? I mean, it had to have been, as a filmmaker myself, I've made a couple films. It can be just the most tedious, demanding process possibly imaginable. So I'm curious, what was that process creating Kymatica like?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for calling me a gangster. I don't know if I've ever been called one before, but that's pretty awesome.
In the best of ways.
In the best of ways, for sure. Kymatica, so both Esoteric Agenda and Kymatica were very interesting processes, because I didn't question a thing. I didn't think of what it was going to turn into. I didn't have a plan. I didn't script anything out. I didn't work on development and pre-production. I just started putting words to an editing software and putting images on top of it. And it was stream of consciousness. Both films took just about exactly 6 months to make. So I cranked them out in 6 months. I sat in front of the computer, became, pale and, pasty white. I wasn't getting any sun.
Right.
And I was in a trance the entire time.
Wow.
And, you know, this wasn't induced by anything other than a mind blown. My mind was blown by what I was researching.
Right.
So, you know, I didn't overthink the process was, I would say, the number one. I had this, you know, this voice telling me, go, like,
Mm.
make this, but it didn't explain what this was. I just knew, just start speaking, start editing, start putting stuff together.
Just go.
Yeah. And, you know, so the interesting thing is a lot of people were hitting me up and was just like, man, you must have been researching this stuff for like years before making this film.
Yeah.
And I said, actually, my research started when I decided to make the film.
Wow.
Like when my mind was blown by previous films that I'd seen, I just trusted my intuition, and I just spent all my time online, you know. So I was, and this was back in the day when you could find um more stuff on Google, more stuff on YouTube and Google
Sure.
videos than you can today. So I was listening to lectures from morning to night, constantly just filling. And I'm sure there was a lot of stuff that I didn't retain, but I retained everything that I needed to. And, you know, this was back during web. This is the start of web 2 or no, this was the beginning, you know, maybe the middle of web 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, but a lot of what I was doing was finding hyperlinks. I would like research something and I would find something else. Like in Wikipedia, you have this other link that you can click on. You're like, I want to go deeper down that. So click on that. That would lead me into territories that I never expected. But it's not like I did, you know, 5 terabytes of, you know, research and I only used one.
Right.
I basically, everything I researched, I put in those films.
Wow.
You know, it's kind of why it was super dense. But I was doing things like, you know, at first I was talking about magic and the, you know, the use of wars and large events on specific dates under specific astrological signs,
Right.
that have to do with pagan holidays. And all of a sudden I would like click on a link and it would be this guy talking about maritime admiralty law. And I'm like, I just didn't question it. I was like, okay, this is very off topic, but I'm going to go there. And I would start learning about that. And I'm like, oh my God, it started putting the pieces together for me. So a lot of it I can't take credit for. The process of it was intuitive, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also in that respect, like, was I being communicated to? You know, like they seemed like my thoughts, and a lot of it seemed like, you know, just by chance I would click on this link and I would click on that link. But at the end of the day, the way that it just turned itself into a cohesive story in a film,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I wish I had some kind of formula that I understood from that. But really, the best formula that I could understand from it was when you feel like, you know, you must do something.
Yeah.
Remove all the obstacles, like
Right.
all your self-sabotaging, like, I don't know if I can, or what if I waste all this time? And then, you know, time is money. And I didn't question a thing. I just started putting it together. And yeah, you know, I was going into debt at the time, but I didn't even question whether that was a good thing or a bad thing.
Right.
So I mean, that's my best understanding and recollection of making Kymatica and Esoteric Agenda.
Wow, man. Yeah, I
I
wish you
was
had.
listening to a lot of beautiful music at the time.
Okay.
I would listen to beautiful music in the background while editing, and then I would like, you know, put
Mm-hmm.
that in the track. So let me just say that I spent more time focusing on how the soundtrack and the sound of my voice fit than I did on the visuals.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You
No.
know?
The information is pure. Like you could just listen to Kymatica as an audiobook or something, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all you really need to do to have your mind blown. And I wish you had that formula as a filmmaker as well on a PDF that I that I could read through and create my own. But yeah, it fascinates me how the best art is created through just flow state, you know,
Yes.
and without having any attachment to what it's going to do, what it's going to provide, what it's going to create. And I catch myself as an artist going there, right? Like, oh, well, people really like to listen to this. Well, who cares, right? You weren't thinking about that when you were making Kymatica, or people really like to watch this. And yeah, just what a testament to all artists all over the world. Just make your art, and the right people will find it. Fascinating, brother. So there are some questions that I want to ask you. They're big questions. And so do I have permission to ask you these big questions?
You can go into any territory you want, man.
Amazing. So I feel
I'm an
like
open book.
they're going to open a lot of books for us to go through as well. The first one is, what is life and why is it important? Why are we here? I guess you could ask, and why is it important?
First thing I will say, I will give you an answer, but the first thing I will say is I have notions, but answers, solid answers. I'll be upfront. I have none of them.
Right.
I have notions that, and I don't think the answers are actually what we're looking for. You know, we don't need a solid fixed answer. We actually perform better with unpredictable future than we do with a predictable future.
Exactly.
And what I would say is this is a school. You know, we are here to learn. I was actually just on a podcast yesterday where I was basically, some people were just talking about technology. And this one guy was like, you know, I know a lot of my friends that are just like, F all technology. I want to live in the woods. I want to have chickens. I want to blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know, like I share those sentiments,
sure,
but I don't know if life is really all about us living out our desires, you know, because a lot of the times, and then I was challenged. He was like, you know, well, what's wrong with being happy? What's wrong with living out our desires? And I said, there's nothing wrong with it. But to assume that living our desires is the point of life cuts you off from everything else. If you assume that life is a school, and even if yesterday seems exactly the same as today, today is teaching you something different than yesterday. That just means you have to listen. You know, have you ever had somebody put on a CD and then put the same song on vinyl and be like, do you hear the difference? And a lot of people are like, no, I don't. They sound exactly the same. And they're like, well, listen. I think that's a lot of what life is doing. We call a lot of things monotonous, but really it only speaks to the quality of our attention. So I think life is a school. We're here to learn. And yes, happiness is a beautiful aspect of life. Our desires and living out our desires are great teachers. But I think that also pain is a great teacher. I think fear is a great teacher. And I think a lot of the times people feel like there's only one thing you can do with fear. And I'm like, no, you can leverage fear. You know, in the same way that, you know, people, I have a good friend who was saying, you know, I love doing my art, but when somebody says, hey, can you distill this down and make it more practical or something? And I get all this anxiety, like I don't know what to do. And, you know, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And I'll just say like, well, instead of feeling like anxiety is wrong, have you ever asked the question, what is this preparing me for? Just like you turn around, you're on the road and you turn around to see you're 5 seconds away from getting hit by a bus. Adrenaline courses through your veins. That adrenaline, a lot of people say, well, it's so taxing on the nervous system. And it's like, okay, so in that moment, do you want to sit down and talk about your feelings? Or do you want to use that adrenaline to get the hell out of the way and then process your feelings? And what I'm saying about that is a lot of people, they let fear control them and they never leverage it. They never realize that fear is a fuel. Of course, you don't want to sit in fear. Of course, you don't want to sit in adrenaline. It's there to move you quickly. And then you can complete the process of whatever you're supposed to learn from that. Like look both ways before crossing the road. Or when it comes to conspiracy, you know, like maybe some people aren't supposed to go that far down the rabbit hole. You know, and maybe all that fear is telling you is like, all right, you know, you don't have to now just tuck tail and run, but what you can do is like, give it a break for a while, integrate. And it's the same thing with plant medicines. A lot of people are like, you know, I want to be the most awake out of anyone who's ever been awake. And it's just like, do you take any time to be sober and integrate? Like you got a lot of lessons from those plant medicines, I'm sure. But, you know, like, if you keep eating and you never digest, you're going to explode.
Right.
And these are the very same metaphors and analogies that go with, you know, information or whatever else it is. So, and I guess like, that's the best I could say about what life is. I believe it's a school. And I think Socrates probably said it best is, maybe it was Plato, if you believe everything and nothing simultaneously, then you won't block or resist any part of reality, nor will you invest yourself too deeply into it and life becomes too serious. So
Mhm.
you're following that middle path. And if something sounds wacky to you, you don't just be like, I don't believe it, I resist that. You're
Sure.
like, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe, maybe's good enough. I don't have to stand on a yes or stand on a no.
Yeah.
So life's a
Absolutely.
school.
Absolutely. As we call it in retreats, the Earth University, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I've learned, through my personal awakening, and then being from Louisiana, having very traditional family, through my awakening, what I was being taught, right, quote unquote, taught my whole life, as a child into young adulthood was, you do this, this, and this, and you can come into the kingdom of heaven. You believe that Jesus is God, you come into the kingdom of heaven. And when I realized what the kingdom of heaven was on an experiential level in every cell in my body, right, I went back to tell my parents, and thinking that they would just totally open up and receive this beautiful information and this gift. And I quickly learned that not everybody's curriculum is the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's here to learn different things. Everybody's on their own unique journey. And the only way for us to really, as facilitators, creators, artists, the only way to really call in our tribe, those who are also taking the same classes, right, at Earth University, is to create, is to do, is to build it, and they will come. And so that's totally on point with what I've experienced in my life, bro. So uh, super solid. And another thing that I feel like life is, in addition to school, is a game, right? Like, we're here to play this game of life. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a very advanced multidimensional virtual reality game, right? Almost like a game of Sims. And I feel like right now, and I'm sure you'd agree, we're kind of at this boss level of this game, right? We're we've reached the giant castle where Bowser is awaiting us, right? And Bowser is, the government, COVID, whatever your Bowser is. Everybody's different. Um, but it's a very interesting time, and I and I'm sure you agree with this. I feel like there was this very large awakening that took place years ago, but primarily around 2019. I feel like the light switches on so many people just whoosh, got turned on, and I mean, what perfect timing, right? And now
Mm.
we've kind of experienced, whether it's destiny, whether it's part of the game, right, part of the schooling, or the polarity of that has been this cycle that we're going through, or not so much a cycle, but this phase, this chapter that we're going through. So I'm curious on your opinion on what we're going through right now as a collective is obviously very radical, right? We now, they're on the news talking about food shortages and COVID and masks forever, and there's so much going on. Vax cards, a lot of our simple freedoms are kind of being just totally dissolved, and a lot of people's fear is that that'll never come back. And so a question that I've been asking myself and the universe is this the polarity of the Great Awakening that's happening? Or was the Great Awakening something that was designed to prepare us for this time? A lot of people think it's 2020 to 2027 based on law of one materials, which feels right to me. So I'm curious as to your thoughts. Back to the question: is this a polarity of the Great Awakening, or is the Great Awakening something to prepare us for this time?
It's really interesting because, like, what exactly is the Great Awakening
Right.
other than, and I say this respectfully also, but it's a story. All things are
Mm,
stories. Everything we get from the internet is part of a story that we're also weaving. We're,
mm,
we're we're a part of this. And by the way, we are hardwired for story. We're not hardwired for fact or data.
right.
All data, the inner philosopher always starts weaving it into a story. It's just the way that we are. So when it comes to this great awakening, I definitely believe an awakening is happening.
Hmm.
In the same way, I don't believe we have enough So let's say, you know, if the world were on ayahuasca right now,
Right.
we don't have enough guides. We don't have enough, you know, shamans. We don't have enough people that understand that really what needs to be happening right now is a lot more holding space for the sometimes ugly process that people just have to go through. You
Yeah.
know, before we get to collective harmony, we have to go through some shit.
Yeah.
You know, it happens on plant medicine. It happens, you know, in anything that rocks your world to the core. First, there's a dying of the old. There has to be. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we can't let the old live and still keep giving birth to the new.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what I kind of see is happening is a lot of people are, there's also this idea of an awakening is like a binary thing. There's a sleep and there's an awake, and that
Right.
all being awake is the same across the board. But I may wake up grumpy and you may wake up
Right.
jolly,
It's
you
not
know,
true.
and we're
Right.
we're both awake.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's what I see more or less is happening around the world is people are awakening, but they're awakening into specific myopic perspectives, which is
Right.
a human thing. We all have our own myopic perspective. The point is to broaden that perspective and then also realize that everything you believe, it doesn't have to be true.
Right.
This is, I think people get hung up on this thing that like what you believe has to be true. Like I invent perspectives that benefit my life all
Right.
the time.
Right.
You know, like one is I could stand in front of the sink and do dishes, complaining about how I always have to stand in front of the sink and do dishes, or I always have to clean up after my kids. You know, that's a perspective, and it's true. I always have to clean up after my kids. But what if I invent the perspective that this is for a reason? I can't prove that. You know, you try and get me to scientifically prove that this is all for a reason. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. But
Mm-hmm.
if I say this is all for a reason, and there's a clue inside all of these hardships that I have to perform, that is something that my soul needs. So my soul needs these hardships. And in that, if I don't gripe, but I actually go through a gratitude list and I just do my work, my life will become better. And then guess what? My life actually gets better. Keeping a
Mm-hmm.
gratitude journal has been found to lower inflammation around the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Not even gratitude itself lowers inflammation, just keeping and engaging with the gratitude journal
Right.
lowers inflammation around the heart. So like we invent these things, we're allowed to invent it. And I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times we get so stuck in this science will tell you what reality is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not hardwired for fact, we're hardwired for story, like I said.
Right.
And you know, when it comes to when it comes to what can we become, not give me the concrete facts of who I am. No, screw that. I don't want your science and your data to like put me in a box because all your data screams this is the most that humans can do.
Right.
I'd rather invent it. And most people would say, well, that's lies, that's trickery, that's not reality. And I would say, then why is it possible? Why are people creative? How and why can we invent realities that aren't real and then convince people of it and then start massive movements? You
Mm-hmm.
know, propaganda is a thing. Every country since
Mm-hmm.
time immemorial has used that with great efficacy. So I think what the real awakening is, we'll know it when we see it, and it will be a collective art revolution. It won't be by force. It will be, art doesn't force you to believe. It's not saying like, what's 2 + 2? You better say 5, right? It's not doing that. Art circumvents all of our red flags. And if it resonates, it resonates, right? And we're talking frequency again. And I think the future of medicine and the future of entertainment and a lot of things are moving towards frequency. What resonates, resonates. And why do, you know, I don't even get into arguments sometimes when people like disagree with a view that I have on the world. I typically I try and find like, okay, this person wants to debate to see if there's some external concrete factual reality that we can both agree on.
Right.
I would rather us disagree on what reality is and produce harmony anyway.
Right.
That's what an artist does. Think of
Right.
Stewart Copeland and Sting. They didn't like one another at all, but
Right.
they made music that neither one of them could have produced on their own. Same for
Right.
Pink Floyd. David Gilmour, Roger Waters did not like one another. They
Great
produced
example.
music together. Despite all their differences, they produced harmony. That is an analogy of what I know humans are capable of. We can invent the solution that does not yet exist, that every scientist would say, impossible. Our science doesn't prove that that's possible. Well, guess what? We can. We can invent the way through this. And that's why a lot of people are, when you get hung up on thinking that what you're getting from the internet is either false or true, you're just you think that you're just here to discern reality. No, you're here to engage and also invent reality with us.
Right.
I think we are all the creators, and when artists wake up, that would be better than any standing army.
Right.
Artists waking
Right.
up and creating a collective art revolution, and that revolution will be televised because it'll be so fucking cool. Just
Because it'll be
imagine,
artists filming it.
right? It'll be artists filming it, and like the
Yeah.
point of art is to resonate.
Yeah.
So if it hits you, and like, how music, it, like, if it's good and it resonates, it makes your body want to move.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the scientific explanation for that?
Right.
Right?
Goosebumps, you name it. Yeah.
Where's the explanation for that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't care to explain it when you're feeling it, when you're moved by it. It's a higher phenomena. Just
Mm-hmm.
like singing is a higher informational language than just speaking
Mm-hmm.
most times. So, that's what I think the Great Awakening will truly be. If there is
Mm-hmm.
one awakening coming, one thing that I'm calling for is people to use their voice. You were put here with a voice, and that's not just your voice box. That means everything that you express and you do, all your art, the way you behave, the way you treat your children, the way you treat other people, the way you treat people that you even believed were your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to show that there's a way through this that would blow most people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fully convinced that that's why we're here. We're
Mm-hmm.
not here to just survive and stay away from death and bad decisions. There's a reason, and I'll end with this.
Mm-hmm.
The flow state. Flow state is brought on primarily. One of the best triggers for the flow state is by reaching outside your comfort level. So if you're going to jump from one tree to the next or something like that, like 4% beyond your comfort level, not 50, not 0.2%, but 4% is like that sweet spot where there's danger. That's a little bit of danger because it's beyond your comfort zone. So you are intentionally introducing danger, but at a very specific interval
Mm-hmm.
that allows for the flow state to be to come about, which I
Mm-hmm.
believe is a higher elevated form of play.
Right.
And so with that, it's like a recipe.
Mm-hmm.
If you have like a beautiful dish and you put 50% salt in it, like that's going to ruin the dish. But if you put, and maybe salt is wrong because I don't know about 4% with salt in a dish, but
Right.
you put a little bit of a spice in it,
Right.
and it perfects the recipe.
Yeah.
But if you were to just have that spice on its own, it would burn the hell out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what most people, we don't realize that we're stuck on these extremes. It either has to be this way or it has to be that way. I would say invent the bridge between the two of them, because we're
Yeah.
artists and because we can.
I love that, brother. It's what you're referring to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would call it the edge, right? Pushing to that edge and kind of walking on that tight edge, right? Or I love riding my motorcycle out in Sedona, my dual sport, and there's moments where I'm just you're in such a flow state because you have to be. There's cactuses to your left, a sheer cliff to your right, and you have to be fully aligned. Or playing music, right? Getting lost in the sauce and music. Much less, risk for error or margin for error there. But I love what you're referring to. For me, it provokes this idea that collectively, through the pandemic, through this unveiling, right? This apocalypse, which just refers to the unveiling, we are collectively on this edge, which is allowing us to collectively find our flow state. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that we are collectively on this edge, and many people are letting the fear take the steering wheel.
Right.
They're not engaging with it. They're not waking up to that, like, everything that seems like an enemy or a boogeyman that's coming to get you, all these things that seem to be conspiring against you. They're stuck in this, I'm smaller than the problem.
Right.
But
Which is what
no
the problem wants
real,
you to think.
yeah. And, you know, in a sense, it's also perfectly designed, because at the end of the day, you create that reality. You know, you tell yourself you're smaller than the problem. Guess what's going to manifest? And for an artist, you know, stepping outside that edge, the worst you're going to do is screw up. You know, the stakes aren't super high. If you're playing a live show, yeah, you know, the stakes are higher.
Right.
But I would say, yes, we're definitely on that edge. And you know, just for the example of the globe, right? Here's the Earth. And then you ever seen that, like, the atmosphere would be like a layer of paint on a basketball. That's how thick the atmosphere is. You could, let's just say that's 4%. You know, the rest is 96%, when really it's probably smaller than 4%. But let's just say that there's so much diversity and so much information and rich opportunity and possibility in that tiny sliver, far more than would be housed through the rest of the 96%. Because if I'm using this as an analogy, that rest of the 96% is what's already known to you. Right. So, like, it's your comfort zone. It's already known to you. And if you repeat those behaviors, it's safe. It might be fun, right? You keep, and I'm not saying repeating behaviors is not good. Discipline, meditation, taking walks in the evening might be familiar. I'm not saying we should always be going out and pushing that edge, but at times we must destabilize what is stable. We must. Right. And so I say that word because to destabilize, we're tapping into the 96% of information in that 4%, right? And there's only 4% of information left in the 96% of our comfort zone. So when I say the word destabilize, it just seems like people like, yeah, you know, that's not good. We go into countries and we destabilize them. It's like, well, you know, like, that's one specific instance of, like, what is our intention behind the destabilization? Right. But you go to an ayahuasca ceremony because you're feeling bored and stuck, and you have writer's block, and your marriage is stuck, and everything is stuck in life, and you want something to get unstuck. So what do? You destabilize your default mode. Literally, psychedelics destabilize the default mode network in the brain. It's a bunch of brain regions that communicate with one another when you're just reminiscing. It's using a lot of your energy, and you're just reminiscing, like, I wonder what John over there is thinking, or I wonder if I should have said that to Becky over there, and blah, blah, blah. Well, you destabilize the default mode network, and what happens is a flood of novelty, new information, new things to turn over. And naturally, a lot of what people's emotional states turn into is, this is too fast of an acceleration. I don't like it. It's accelerating too fast. And they're not even afraid of what's happening. They're afraid of what might happen if it keeps accelerating at that rate. Right. So also, what destabilizes is breath work. Breath work destabilizes the default mode. Meditation does it. Getting hit in the head with a baseball. And I'm not suggesting any one of these, but what I'm saying is, right now in history, there's a destabilization effect happening. Right. People's minds, they're either having to double down on the lie that they told themselves, or wake up from the lie. Right. And what I'm saying is, the lie was not the problem to begin with. The lie was the lesson. Right? You know, the lie was the lesson. We are here to learn and to grow. If everything were just plain and simple on the face of it, there would be nothing to learn and grow from. So yes, we're living in illusion, but unless we have gratitude for it, we're going to call it a boogeyman and not a teacher. Right. The destabilizing events in world history, pandemics, you know, like false flags, whatever it might be, we need to first have reverence for them. Yeah. And reverence comes from the Latin word reverie, to stand in awe of. We must have reverence for these events. You don't, like, if you think COVID is a false flag, have reverence for it. If you think it's perfectly normal on the face of it, and all the news streams are giving you the facts, still have reverence for it. But if you are interested and you want to know the truth, because a lot of people, they want safety. Let's just be honest. Most people, they're happy in the herd, and they're happy with safety. They will parrot lines that they don't believe because it makes them feel like they're included in the herd. We also should not talk trash on those people.
Right.
Because they serve a very important function. They hold conventional reality together. I know a lot of people are like, dude, I'm tired of this conventional reality. I would hazard to say you're tired with a small sliver of conventional reality. But if all conventional reality went out the window, you'd be begging for it to come back.
Of course. Yeah.
And also, I had somebody today, I was just posting on Josh Fox's Instagram page about the Will Smith smacking Chris Rock across the face.
The notorious smack heard across the world.
I was just like, hey, does anyone think that the smack looked kind of rehearsed? And somebody said, Ben, you think everything's a conspiracy. And I said, that's not exactly true, but I get where you're going with it. And I said, you can test that hypothesis anytime. Like, let's have a conversation. And he said, I'm not going to waste my energy. And I just said, good on you. I could have said, that's the exact excuse I hear out of anyone who's never done any research, but they want to hold the belief that it's not true.
Right.
But I knew in my heart that this person has to hold that line. He doesn't even know why, but he has to hold that line in the same way that I have to hold the line of the conspiracy. Because if you think, what was my job or the conspiracy theorist's job in the tribe? What was the paranoid person's job in the tribe? The one who's always vigilant, always looking for danger. What was their job? What do you think?
Keep the tribe safe.
They were the lookout. Right. They were on the periphery. They were always looking out. And guess what? Maybe when they're all hanging out and that lookout guy is hanging out, they're sitting there talking about all the shit that could go wrong. And everyone's like, oh man, you're such a downer. You love this downer because you're not dead.
Hey, brother, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, shit. Cool. We have some gnarly weather here, so it just cut out, but cool. Picked it back up. But I lost you right there at dead.
Oh, okay. Dead.
Yeah, this you're the scout, basically the lookout, and the reason why you're not dead.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, in the tribe, you love that lookout. You love that role. You appreciate that role, but your conscious mind can only capture whatever, a small percentage of reality. So sometimes it's hard for you to have gratitude for those things that might irritate your stability. It might destabilize what you call my happy, routine in life. But again, those crisis moments, like the crisis moment we're having in the world right now, or the crisis moment of somebody saying, I don't think we're safe, like a conspiracy theorist or the lookout. If we were to leverage that feeling we get when we hear it, instead of being like, I'm going to double down on the illusion, or that I believe it and I'm going to turn into Chicken Little as well. I don't think we need to turn the entire world into conspiracy believers. I definitely don't believe that's it. And in fact, I think conspiracy has a very valuable place, but it's not everywhere.
Right.
That place is not everywhere.
Right.
So, for me, I find that my role specifically in the world right now is when I was talking about this stuff in 2008 and 2009, I didn't even know, like, I knew why I was doing it, but I couldn't wrap words around it. And then I started getting kind of lost in the, I'm sick and tired of talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I just went on talking about psychedelics and frequency and yada, yada, yada. And then 2020 hits. And I'm like, oh, you know what? A lot of people are going to be waking up now and they need help.
Right.
And I'm not
Exactly.
here to wake new people up that don't want to be woken up. I'm just here to help those who are naturally waking up to, man, I've been lied to and now I feel scared and I have no
Right.
one to talk to because my parents are telling me I'm paranoid. All my friends are telling me I'm a nut job,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm scared because I actually believe it.
Yeah.
And if they wake up to realize, oh, I'm the scout, you know, I'm the watcher on the wall in Game of Thrones, you
Mm-hmm.
know, terminology. I'm here to help guide these people into realizing the world is not ending, it's changing.
Yeah.
You know, yes, there's a death and there's a birth coming, and we do, humanity survives this, and it's not going to happen exactly like you think when you're in fear mode, nor is it going to happen exactly like you think when you think everything's peachy. It's going to be this gradient in between, and your job is not to wake the world up. It's not to go at every party when people are trying to tell dick and fart jokes and you're sitting there talking about building 7 and 9/11. Like it's not your, you realize like their eyes are rolling, you realize that they're just like, I want to get the hell out of this conversation
Yeah.
because it doesn't belong everywhere.
Right.
So, you know, we're supposed to be here for one another, but I think there's a language that we use when we're using direct to on the nose language. People don't like that. They don't like being told what reality is. They, like in a movie, it's, you know, somebody doesn't come in and slam a beer down on the table and look angrily at their wife and then yell, I'm mad, right? It's obvious you're mad. Take that line out. It's obvious if it's delivered well. So in reality, people want to discover, they want to go on the quest, which is based on a question. They want to go on the quest of life. They don't want to have some know-it-all over here. I told you, this is what reality is, and here's what you got to do.
Mm.
It's about harmony. We're here to
Yeah.
make music with one another. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean that literally and figuratively. We're here
Mm-hmm.
to make music. We're here to take our differences and turn them into music, not fight over it. Your skin looks different. Your beliefs look different. I'm in this clique. I hate you guys, right? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
that's what the media seems to be pushing.
Right.
And I think the media has its place. I think, again, a lot of the lies being pushed through the media, it has its place. It's here to really, like, if that's God whispering to you, God's whispering, how well are you paying attention? And how much do you want to buy the lie because you're afraid of looking at the truth? All of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is implied in life. And we're looking for external institutions or people to blame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't feel right about life because of Bill Gates and because of Fauci and because of
Right.
Trump and because of Biden. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
brother, your diet probably sucks and you're not breathing well.
Right.
Like that's probably why you don't feel good inside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Blame the most obvious stuff first, not the thing that you read on the news this morning. So that's my take on that. I think there is an awakening, but we need to play it like musicians, not like scientists and fact checkers.
Finding harmony.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's all get together and create a beautiful chord. Um, so one final question for you, brother. In the school of life at Earth University, we're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to expand. And I love your philosophy on this. And it sounds like you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but very optimistic about it all. Yes. So my question to you, do you believe that the overall foundation of life, whether it's a game, a school, you name it, do you believe that it is overall benevolent, or or do you believe that it doesn't have uh, it doesn't have a priority in being benevolent
Or a
whatever?
preference.
Yeah, preference. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good question because there's two ways I want to answer this. One is semantically, we can't really drive to a concrete fixed meaning of any word.
Right.
So if I say yes, it's benevolent because I believe there is intelligence guiding this. I don't believe it's unintelligent. I believe that what we experience as our own intelligence is also just a gradient of intelligence that is all around us. And we are this mechanism, a tuner and a receiver that's able to pick up on that. We're able to play with it. We're artists of that intelligence.
Mm.
Um, but with that being said, like benevolence, you know, let's say a horse is caught in some barbed wire
Mm-hmm.
and it's freaked out by humans.
Mm-hmm.
And the humans are trying to help. They're benevolent. They're trying to get the horse unstuck. Otherwise, the horse will die. It's a benevolent action, but the horse doesn't see it that way. The horse thinks it's being attacked. So it fights, and it's hurting itself, thinking it's being hurt because these humans are getting closer and closer. It's hard to say what benevolence really is. Right? Humanity can get wiped out. And if one human's left for 2 weeks to ponder philosophically over what happened, with that human's individual desires and thought processes, they may think like, this is not a benevolent world. It doesn't care a fig about me.
Right.
But how do you really classify, is it benevolent or not? Like, what if our consciousness does live on and humanity needs to get wiped out in order for, life to start bouncing back, and that's just one example. It may not even be the best example. But what I would say is, I believe that when we try to think, is the world benevolent? Is reality benevolent? The real question we should be asking about ourselves: am I benevolent?
Right.
Because if you can find benevolence within you, there's no place where self is not, right? Like, you are not a part of myself.
Right.
We just haven't discovered it. I have language and ways to understand how all of this stuff inside my skin is self, right? But I believe that myself extends out into the environment in ways that I don't know yet, but I'm here to relate to all of life and you and nature in order to understand that this too is a part of self. Because the environment changes, I change. Right? You affect the oceans, all the marine life that they would just call that their environment. It changes them on a genetic level. It changes their health, everything. We are our environment. We just don't see it as self, because when I make a decision, I only know how to move my arms. I don't yet know how to move that pen over there.
Mm-hmm.
So benevolence there is such a thing. And I do believe that it exists. There's also animosity. There is vengeance. All those things do exist. I think we're tuning forks, and we're meant to strike up that frequency that we know the world needs more of. So, I mean, like, I know that may be kind of dodging the question, but I think like reframing it to say that the only way to answer what reality is through the self anyway.
Right.
So where is benevolence?
Right.
Check in with benevolence within, and you'll come to realize that benevolence exists when we play it, when we strike up the band in that respect. And
it makes the reality around you innately benevolent, right?
Yeah, somebody walks into a room with a shitty attitude, it's easy to get into that shitty attitude.
Yeah.
And we are like tuning forks. You strike a tuning fork over here, this one over here is going to start resonating.
Right.
It's just simple harmonics. So, I think the deeper question is how do we strike up that harmonic for those who are in different resonance?
Yeah.
How do we strike up that harmonic for those who are stuck in the rabbit hole, or they're stuck over here trying to place blame on this group or on that group?
Right.
Benevolence. Yeah, it's a very good word, and we all have access to it. I would say yes, the world has its benevolence, and is I can't wait to hear that song a little bit louder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, brother. And referring back to, it's the story that we tell, truly. And if our story resonates with someone else and helps them out of that hole, this is what you referred to earlier as well, is showing up to hold space, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of our duty, our job, especially you and I and other creators, artists, leaders, facilitators, to do our best to harmonize ourselves so that we are that frequency, right? And we do create that harmony, right? If I'm at this beautiful 432 hertz C and you meet me at that beautiful 432 hertz E, that magic comes together. And for people who aren't familiar with music theory, this is a note, a chord, almost a chord. One more note would make it a chord, but it's what we're creating. And I love your philosophy on this and how you create that metaphor with music is wonderful, especially for me as a musician. I'm totally going to use that. It's beautiful.
Please spread it.
Yeah, man. And just to kind of finalize this question, I think to kind of reframe the question a little bit is are we guided by a higher power, almost like this parental figure that is actually ourselves, but we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. This parental figure of the oversoul of all of us, right, guiding us home. Do you feel that it's more we're more living in that reality, or more in the reality of it's an algorithm of this matrix, right? And when we resonate a certain frequency, we attract other frequencies. Or do you feel like it's kind of a combination of both?
Yeah, I definitely would say that it would be closer to a combination of both.
Gotcha.
I definitely believe that to say that there's like a deeper conspirator, because I've even said before that there's only one conspirator.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that is the self. And a lot of us claim the self. There's 7 billion selves. I don't. We haven't conceived. We haven't wrapped our mind around the inconceivability of what real self is.
Right.
And so the algorithm idea, the concept of working with it like a formula, there is that reality as well, nested within this reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, well, I'll just say that Selin Atasoy from Imperial College London, she showed this brain imaging called connectome brain harmonics. And she applied the Laplace equation to the brain and found that the brain washes through, almost like have you ever seen an octopus wash through all these different colors like an LCD screen?
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's how it looks when you're visualizing the brain like this. It's washing through different symphonies. And Selin was saying, like, your brain has these, like, it's not just when you have, like, you're in alpha. It's not just your whole brain is vibrating at alpha frequency.
Right.
It's that certain regions are, and certain regions are vibrating at different frequencies.
Right.
And that's connectome brain harmonics. And she found that because your brain operates more like a symphony than it does a calculator. It's not there sitting doing equations. It's not, math based. It's more like a symphony. And there's a lot of room and gradient within that, and it can morph and it can change. It's not digital and clicky and edgy.
Right. It's more of a circle, not a square.
Yeah, and she gave LSD to some of these volunteers, and that made the symphony more complex. Sure. What she calls it is increased repertoire of the brain harmonics. And that allows potentially for far more access to harmonizing with the outside world, because we're resonating with those frequencies. Our symphony is more complex. And now we have that entry or that bridge from external reality. So we can either cocoon ourselves off and live inside that comfort zone, or we can branch out. And LSD allows you to open those doors of perception. So I find that interesting, because to answer your question, to get back on point, the analogy that I would say between those two, things that you said, I would say the analogy is, perhaps you could say it's impersonal. It's just a symphony, and we're along for the ride. We're, like, we may have desires of self-preservation, but at the end of the day, if you're just here for a glimpse, you're just here for a glimpse. right?
Mm.
And the real work is gratitude, humility, and service. And really that gratitude helps you realize that, yeah, you may be in pain right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't be grateful for this. And you may be confused right now. So, cymatics, there's like
Mhm.
a certain frequency, or I'm sorry, there's a certain geometric pattern when
Mhm.
this frequency is pumped in.
Mhm.
And then if you turn up the frequency before it turns into a more complex pattern, it goes through chaos.
Yeah.
That's confusion. A lot of people sit in this confusion and they think this is wrong. And
Mm.
they use the word wrong. This should not be.
Mhm.
Reality should not have this. I should feel happy, right?
Mhm.
I shouldn't feel confused. But in a way, that's destabilizing and allowing for the old to deconstruct itself to make way for the new.
Mhm.
So we have all these preferences on what life should be for us. And I think at the end of the day, if we can stay connected with, I have gratitude for the fact that I know I could die tomorrow, and I at least got
Mhm.
this glimpse of life. I have humility, knowing that I really don't know anything. And most of the things most people say they know, they got from the internet and somebody else wrote it. And like when you say you hate this world leader or that world leader, just at least acknowledge that you've never met that person. You probably didn't watch any of their own speeches. You're just letting other people spin a yarn around those people. And now you have hatred in your heart.
Right.
That's not humble.
That. Yeah.
And then so in being in service to others is to remind others all of this could be taken from you. You think it's bad, it could get a lot worse. That is perhaps that is God's way, or the reality's way of, you know, you have a chance here. You create it. You can be humble, you can have gratitude, and you can live this life no matter what's thrown at you. You are living in that space, and
Mhm.
you've made that good. You've made it a benevolent life for you despite what was thrown at you.
Right.
I think that's what we're here for. And that's why, like, in my work, I'm really just diving deeper into, what does humility look like in a time like now?
Mhm.
What does real service to others look like in a time like now? And when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, when it comes to the lies, when it comes to the technocratic overthrow, when it comes to the media, how can I have gratitude rather than finding all the shit I can bitch about?
Right.
Because I will be a better person for finding gratitude where others say it doesn't belong, than if I just fall into the conventional narrative that it's wrong. And I
Right.
say, we're here to love when it's hardest. It's easy to love when it's easy, right? When everything's
Absolutely.
going great, it's easy to be in love. But when people are bothering you, when the world is bothering you, it's hard to be in love. Well,
Right.
that's where the rubber meets the road. We're here to love those that it's most difficult to love. Doesn't mean agree. Doesn't mean agree. It doesn't mean
Right.
support and send your donations to. It simply means, can you love when it's difficult?
Mm. Well said, brother. I love this reference as well to the cymatics. If anybody hasn't seen that, I highly suggest going look it up on YouTube, because it's such a powerful visual reference for exactly what we're collectively going through right now, and what we're always going through, right, on a personal level. Um, that change from one shape to the other is just total, like you said, chaos. It just looks like random sand all over the
Mm-hmm.
plate, and then boom, it shifts into this beautiful geometry, which we are all made of. So I love that. Go look up cymatics, guys. And Ben, thank you so much for doing this, brother. It's such an honor to have you on. I've been following your work for over a decade now. So thank you, bro, for everything that you do, and your message and what you have to share is so palpable. It's so beneficial to the world right now. And so where can everybody go find you and check out what you got going on in the near future?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for that. And thank you for this platform for me to be able to speak. benjosephstewart.com. You go there, you'll find just about all my work. The only other place is YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and you type in Ben Stewart or Ben Joseph Stewart, you'll find that I have the Ben Stewart podcast. I have Waking Infinity News every single Monday. And then every Tuesday, I do a deeper dive, stuff that sometimes it's the stuff that I can't talk about on YouTube. And that's all over at Ben Joseph Stewart if you sign up and become a member. But yeah, YouTube, Instagram, and benjosephstewart.com are the places to find me.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much. And everybody go check out Ben and follow his work. And obviously go watch Kymatica if you haven't seen it, and red pill all your friends. Thank you, brother. Big blessings.
Much love.
Peace.